Hello, everyone. This is Brad Neufeld, your host of Resilience. Before we get started on today's interview, I wanted to say a few things. This guest that we have on today, Miss Ann Glim, who is the author of the book Trapped Within, a true story about survival, recovery, love, and hope. Joanne is a survivor of a stroke that she had many years ago, and she's been able to take this tragedy that happened in her life and turn it into something pretty special. And I think as you watch this interview today, you'll see the love and passion and compassion that she has for people who are suffering from this particular illness or trauma. And so I'm excited to bring her to you, but I want to tell you a little bit about who she is. She was born in Chicago, Illinois, to a military family, raised in also up in the Washington State area in Anacortes, and I hope I'm saying that right, in the far reaches of the Pacific Northwest. And according to her, it was an ideal place for her to raise a precocious child, especially one with lots of inquisitive and daring habits and things like that. But tragically, her mother passed away from a stroke. And when Joanne was about 14 years old, this was the beginning of a life path plotted with many dark events. Matter of fact, in her own words, she states that instead of consuming me, these challenges that I went through made me stronger. And I'm here to tell you, darkness can be replaced with the light. So enjoy this interview here, and be sure and reach out to Joanne if there's anybody in your family or yourself who are suffering from this particular traumatic event. She is an inspiration to many, and I'm so glad that you're listening to this at this time. Anyway, enjoy the interview. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Resilience with your host, Brad Neufeld. This is the show where you will discover that every challenge that you face in life is conquerable, especially when we work together, because working together with other people is always the best way to go. It's lonely when we don't work together. We all need people, and it's amazing how much you can get done in this life if you just ask others for help. Ask for the help you need. So lose the two, dude, is what I like to say. And anyway, we're going to get started here today. I am so excited, and I'm honored to have a very special guest on today, Ms. Ann Glim. Joanne is a stroke survivor and also the author of the book Trapped Within, a story about survival, recovery, love, and hope. And I've had the honor of knowing Joanne for, how long has it been now, Joanne? About a year?
Almost a year.
Almost a year? And
Yeah.
it's been exciting getting to know you and hearing your story and everything. And as you know, I had a little bit of a mini stroke, I guess they call it, which helped me to change into the career that I was wanting to do anyway. It was kind of my shift to go, all right, Brad, this is where you need to be, so let's go here. But talk a little bit about that, if you don't mind. What was life like? And then you had this stroke, and it just seems like everything was starting to fall apart. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, before it fell apart, it was doing pretty well. About 6 months before the stroke, my husband and I, he had just retired, and we had planned for many years to move down to Florida. And we did. We were here for about 6 months before the stroke happened, taking that time to move into our new home and made it like a 6-month vacation, traveled all over Florida to get to know our new home area and stuff. And we had decided we really needed to get back into working. We were only 50 at the time, or 52, and we didn't want to just sit idle. We knew we still had a lot to give, and now was the time when we could put our energies to what we wanted to do, whether we got paid or not. And I'll tell you, it's the greatest feeling in the world to be able to do what you truly love to do. And so anyway, I had taken a 1-day job with Kelly Services over at Tropicana. And I worked for Kelly for 16 years when I lived up north. I didn't know that the average was only 3 months before people left and went into, full-time employment. But I enjoyed it because my husband had been with his job with AT&T for, 30 some years by the time he retired. And so he had 5 weeks vacation. I thought, if he's sitting home enjoying himself, I'm not going to like that, because if I had a new job, I'd only get 1 week, maybe 2 if I was lucky. So it worked out really well. But during that time, I kept working my way up in the Kelly Services family. And I became a part of management with them. And then before I retired, I spent, I believe it was about 6 or 7 years working with Baxter Healthcare as the person that hired their part-time people. And so it was a fascinating job, and I loved it and had a wonderful time doing it. So when I came down here and took a 1-day assignment, it felt very comfortable and natural to me to do that. But while I was there, I spent maybe 3 hours with them, and they had a problem because there was a group of about 13 executives that were together for a meeting, and their secretary had forgotten to order their lunches. And so the gentleman that was in charge came out in a panic saying, I've got all these people and no food. So I said, don't worry about it, I'll take care of it. So I went over to pick up the lunches, and while I was there, I was just flipping through a book or a newspaper, and the gentleman called me up, and I went up and asked him how much I owed him, and it came out sounding like Russian. And I just looked at him, and he stared back at me, and I tried to say it again, and the same thing happened. And so I just handed him the credit card. He gave it back. I took a few of the sandwiches and started walking back out to the car. And by that time, my knees started getting really weak. And then I knew that I was having a stroke. So there was a decision that I needed to make. Do I call for help and tell them I need 911? And I looked at the car, and I knew it was only a matter of blocks to get back to Tropicana. So that's what I did. I drove myself back to Tropicana. And it's funny because if you're a person that's used to being independent, you make decisions and choices depending on what the situation is. And so I decided to drive over there. Well, there was a huge area where there was a place called the Red Barn, which was this huge flea market area. Well, about a week before, the whole thing had burnt down. So it was cinders and ashes. So I knew, okay, if I really get in trouble because I stayed in the right-hand lane, I was going to be turning right anyway. I thought, okay, I'll just pull into this lot and somebody will eventually find the car between all the ashes. And so I made it back to Tropicana. I walked in there, and I looked at those stairs. And I thought, I really don't feel good. I can't take these upstairs. So there was a gentleman that was behind me that helped me grab the rest of the sandwiches and brought them into the reception area. Well, they have a phone, a courtesy phone at the end. And so I picked it up and I called my husband because I thought, I'm going to tell him to meet me at the hospital. Well, when I called him, I was still talking Russian. He couldn't understand a word I said. And there was this long pause. And finally he said, I think you have the wrong number. And I'm going to choke up again. I mean, this has been 22 years later, but I didn't know what to do. And I thought, I have to tell him something that I know he knows. And so I said, October 19th, and it came out clear, and that's our anniversary.
Wow.
And so he just kind of gasped a little bit. He goes, what's wrong? I said, I'm sick. Meet me at the hospital. And I hung up. Well, we have 2 hospitals.
Yeah, how'd you get to the hospital?
So I didn't give him any, so he had to think about which one to go to.
Mm-hmm.
And so I looked at the car still out in front, was still running. And I looked at the people that were coming back from lunch, and I thought, I hate crowds. You know, when they gather around an accident scene or something. And I thought, I'm going to drive myself there. And I did, because it was
Holy
only
cow,
a few
Joanne.
blocks away. I know, these were the
Well, it shows your
decisions.
determination, yeah.
Yeah,
Jeez.
but they're a decision from an adult brain.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to take that into consideration. I thought I was making wise choices.
Wow.
People don't ever do, but I did. Not so
Yeah,
much.
please.
911.
That's a miracle in itself. Wow.
Yeah. And so I got over there, and the gentleman that's part of security drove around. Well, by this time, my face is beginning to droop. I had no control over my arm. My legs, I would lock them, and they stayed in place, thank God. So he came around. He said, lady, you can't park here. And I said, I think I'm having a stroke. And he looked at me and he says, okay, honey, don't worry about your car. I'll keep sure it's safe. And then he left.
Wow.
And I'm like about maybe 30 feet from the door. And I thought it would have been nice if you'd helped me over there.
Right.
But then I
right.
started thinking, you know, with him doing that, maybe I'm not as bad off as I think I am.
Mm-hmm.
So I walked in and stood in the lobby and yelled out, I think I'm having a stroke. Well, use that word in a lobby of a hospital and people come from everywhere.
Oh, they come from everywhere, right.
So I felt like I had made it home, that I was safe. So that's basically in a nutshell what happened.
Wow. And so at that moment, you're there. How long were you in the hospital?
It was a little over a week.
Wow.
The type of stroke I had was hemorrhagic. It was not a blood clot. It was a weakened area in the brain. I probably had it there from birth, and it just decided that was the time that it was going to rupture.
Mm-hmm.
It was a very, very, very slow bleed, and that's why I was able to do all these things. Usually when it happens quickly.
Yeah.
And out of 4 people, 2 of them will die immediately. One will die a few days later, and one will survive, but there's no guarantee to their quality of life.
Wow.
So I really, truly was blessed back to health.
Was there surgery involved at all? I'm just trying to help people understand. So if they have these symptoms, like you were saying, you just started feeling, was it headachy? Was it like,
No.
were just?
I had no symptoms at all. It wasn't until I tried to speak and it came out sounding like Russian.
Like
Yeah.
you said, yeah. And like, where did I learn? Yeah, when did I learn Russian?
Yeah, right. Somebody decipher. So, but the thing is, the brain is so complex.
Yes.
That you don't know how you're going to respond. There's some things that are universal, and that's why if you notice someone who their mouth is beginning to droop, they seem confused, they can't raise their arm, they can't speak to you. All of these are usually universal signs. So if you can ask somebody to smile and they can't, it's usually a pretty good indication that they are having a stroke. And don't wait to see if there's any other
right.
signs, because they have medications that can help you immediately, and you may not have to go through what I went through. Mm-hmm. So, you know, always call 911.
Right. So now as you're in the hospital and you're laying there, what kind of thoughts are going through your mind? I mean, is it like?
I have no idea.
Really?
I have no idea. I have no knowledge, no memories of that time in the hospital at all. I
Okay.
went back um, after I had recovered and was back home. I went back and asked if I could go up to the room. I knew the room number. I know that my husband and I had one conversation um, when we were in the room, but I don't recall what it was. And I just remember that much, and that's it. I
Hmm.
didn't start having pieces of memory return until I was in rehab.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. How long was that
I was there
before that started
for
to happen?
about 3 months.
Three
I was
months.
in the
Wow.
hospital for a little over a week and then in rehab for 3 months, learning how to do everything. And I mean
Wow.
everything over again.
Well, and to, oh man, to even describe how hard, difficult it was to say, all right, certain parts of your body, legs, whatever, move, and it's not moving. How
Yeah,
frustrating was that?
yeah. It was terrifying.
Yeah.
But you don't. I can say that that's how I felt now, but
Hmm.
that's not how I felt when it actually was happening. I
Okay.
had too much to do to try to figure out
Yeah.
how I was going to make me work again.
Yeah.
And I did. I would try all these different things, and nothing would happen. They had my arm propped up
Hmm.
with pillows so I could look at my hand and see if I could make the fingers work or my wrist turn or just something. I was totally paralyzed on my right side. I
Hmm.
couldn't walk. I had double vision so badly it looked like the nurse had six of the needles that she was bringing to me.
Right.
And I couldn't walk, couldn't talk, couldn't see straight. So,
And so, at what point did you? Well, let me ask you this: what kept you going? What did you have something that you just felt inside that you said, you know what, I need to conquer this?
yeah, I didn't want to be trapped within.
There you
That's where
go.
the name of the book came from.
Because I can only
Yeah.
imagine where you said in your introduction there with you were a driven person and you were probably so busy and probably a lot of people relied on you as well for some things you were doing, and then all of a sudden you felt like I can't do those things anymore.
Yeah.
And oh, I'm just trying to put myself in your shoes and feel the frustration of, oh, ugh. At some point, did you have to just go, you know what, I need to stop and take care of me for the moment? Was there anything
Oh,
like that?
that's the only thing I could do. There
Okay.
was nothing else to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, everything that happens to us in our life is leading us to the next point in our life. It's giving us lessons. Even when you fail at something that you do, you've learned lessons from it.
Right.
And I think one of the things I feel very fortunate was to grow up in a family where my grandfather was an inventor. He was a furniture maker, but he was also an inventor. So a lot of times when we sat around the dinner table, the questions always started with, well, what if? And
Mm-hmm.
so I found myself when I was just laying flat in a bed, trying to figure out how I was going to conquer this, the questions always came, well, what if I do this?
Mm-hmm.
Well, what if I look at it this way?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think what helped me was, especially with my speech and with my hand, um, was being in radio. And I think you can identify with this because the register of your voice, when you find your radio voice,
Yeah.
especially for a woman,
Mm-hmm.
has to be lowered. Otherwise, if you try to talk with any kind of authority, it comes out squeaky.
Yeah.
And so you lower your voice so that it's still pleasant, but you have a command over whatever the conversation is going to be. And so I thought, well, what if when I look at my hand and I'm trying to command it to do something, I change the register of my voice? Because the file cabinet where movement was stored in my brain was damaged. You couldn't open that file anymore. So let's open a new file. And so that's what I tried to do. And I worked on it only for maybe about half an hour or an hour. And I sat there and I would tell it in a lower voice, calmly, move. And pretty soon I saw just the finger that I don't want to show you now.
I think we can we can imagine that one.
So it moved.
Yeah.
Just barely.
Uh-huh.
And I was so excited about that. And the nurse that day was in cleaning up the bathroom area, and we were having this conversation, go back and forth. And I screamed for her to come out. Well, she was tripping over all these products, trying to get out the bathroom door. And I told her, I said, watch. And I did it, and I did it again. And she started laughing, and she ran to the door, and her arms were up in the air, and she's shouting hallelujah. And she said that I had just flipped her the bird. And she told me, she said, I don't usually take kindly to it, but she said, this is the best thing I've ever seen, and gave me a huge hug.
Oh, that's so funny. That's so great. Oh, my goodness.
That was the beginning back to help.
Wow. So this whole, wow. And so that had to give you a little bit of excitement when you saw your finger, even though it was.
It gave me a lot of hope. And the thing is, anybody who has a stroke, the hardest thing for them is to face losing who they were. It's truly, and I did not realize this myself until I had written the book. And when I wrote it out of context and put it together. But when I looked at it, when I got the whole thing together chronologically, I realized that I had been grieving for who I had been. And it was not going to come back, not the way it had been before. So I needed to come to terms with that and allow myself to grieve for what was no longer there.
Right. Wow.
So,
wow. Well, Joanne, let's take a quick break here, and when we come back, let's explore that a little bit more. What led up to you wanting to write this book that you wrote and whatnot? But anyway, we're just going to take a quick break. My guest today is Ann Glim. Not only is she a stroke survivor, she's the author of the book Trapped Within, which is a true story about survival, recovery, love, and hope. And I'm excited to jump into your book here because it's really good. And I love how there's a lot of love in it as it's being, I can tell that. You really want to help people that experience what you've gone through and help them to overcome this. And it's just got a great feel about it. But we're going to explore that a little bit when we get back.
thank you.
I'm author Richard Paul Evans. Several years ago, I asked author Mary Higgins Clark the secret to her success. She said, Richard, I try to make every book my best. I've tried to do the same. My readers deserve that. And sometimes magic happens. I think you're going to love my new book, Noel Street. My agent cried 9 times. Even the woman recording the audiobook had to take breaks because she couldn't stop crying. Noel Street is the story of a mother's love and forgiveness. I can't wait for you to read it. That's Noel Street, on sale November 5th.
Hi everyone, I'm Sarah Griffiths. I'm an abuse and trauma therapist, and I'm the host of the Becoming the Light from the Shadows of Abuse podcast. And I invite you to join me every Monday at 7 p.m. Mountain Time, right here on Five Kingdoms Radio, where I share stories to inspire women who are stuck in their abuse story and situation. And if you want to help me make an impact and bring about change and have a story to tell that seems to fit the bill, then please come on my show and share for others to benefit. And you can contact me at my email, sarah@sallyg.com. That's sarah@sallyg.com. And I really look forward to hearing from you.
Have you ever gone through a hard time? If you have, I'm sure you have at one point thought, nobody understands what I'm going through. My name is Tamara K. Anderson, and I'm the host of Stories of Hope in Hard Times. Join me on Resilience Talk Network, Monday through Friday at 12:30 p.m. to hear the stories of other people who have been through hard times and come through with hope, faith, and some tips that you can benefit from.
Welcome to the Resilience Talk Network. My name is Jay Walter, and I'm the host of Rebuilding, heard every weekday night from 6 to 7 p.m. You can listen in and learn how to face your fears, overcome obstacles, and make dreams a reality. So listen every weekday night from 6 to 7 p.m. right here on the Resilience Talk Network.
All right, and welcome back. This is Resilience with your host, Brad Neufeld. Our guest today is Ann Glim. Ann is the author of the book Trapped Within, a true story about survival, recovery, love, and hope. She's also a stroke survivor, and we've been talking about her story. Fascinating, Ann, fascinating. And I can, as I said, I'm trying to put myself in your shoes and feel that excitement once you get that first move. Okay, I can do this. There's something there. But I also like the fact that you pointed out that try something. If one thing's not working, do something different. As ridiculous as it sounds in your mind, do it anyway. Did you find that?
Absolutely.
Process going on there? Oh, incredible. So what prompted you to write this book? Well, let me ask you this. At what point did you feel like, you know what, I've got a book inside of me that I need to write?
Well, I've been a writer for 40-some years. I've done freelance writing and commercials and comedy things, and so I've been involved with writing. I wrote a news article once a week for about 9 years when I lived up north, and so I've always, writing's just a part of who I am. And so when I was in rehab, I would have doctors and nurses and therapists come in and ask me if what they were offering me was helping, because most of them are book schooled. Mm-hmm. They've never survived a stroke. So they're just going by what they've been told. They don't know if it's actually helping or not. Mm-hmm. And so they all would say, you really need to write a book about your experiences.
Okay, so you're prompted by others?
I was.
Okay.
And even with all of my experience with writing, I knew that writing a book is a totally different animal. And I didn't feel that I had the qualifications to do something that would be really good enough to be out into the public arena. It would be fine to share with my family and friends, but I really wanted a book that was going to be top notch, that people would want to read. And so I wrote the book 4 months after the stroke. In fact, when I first got home, every day I would sit down and write things. Well, my hand was still so weak it would just sit on the keys and give me a string of letters. I'd have all T's or all O's or what. It got to the point that spell check ignored me. I mean, it wouldn't even try to help. This woman's impossible. It's never gonna work.
Did you shift the language to Russian? No, never mind. We won't go there.
I should have. I would have finished that book sooner. Well, it took me about 4 months to write it. I looked at it. It was horrible. Not the content, but just trying to get it into the chapters and the sequence and the editing and everything that goes into it. Well, I have to tell you, my mentor is Richard Paul Evans.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember at one of the seminars that he had, he said that he edits his books up to 70 times. And that really gave me hope and made me realize that even though I thought that the first manuscript was horrible, when he said his are too, I felt like I'm on the right track. I'm doing something good.
Yeah, I know. For those who haven't heard of Richard Paul Evans, please look him up. He wrote a book a long time ago. Well, that's where it all started, called The Christmas Box House. And he's since written 40, at the time of our interview here, he's written 40 New York Times bestsellers. And I know he's coming out with a couple more here pretty soon. So yeah, what a mentor to have. And so And do you find that this happens a lot in your life? Because I know as a coach and mentor myself, I find this too, where people, they want to do something, they feel it in their heart, here's something I want to do, but then they almost talk themselves out of it, or they feel
I think we all do that.
Yeah. Feel like
and that's a good point to bring up, because after writing the book, I put it in a drawer and stayed there for 20 years.
20 years.
Yeah.
Holy cow, I didn't know it was that long.
Yeah. And so when I finally decided to take another look at it, I had already written another book.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like having your first child. Hopefully I worked out all the situations that I thought I needed more experience with on that book. And then I took a look at this one and stayed with it until I had it done.
Oh, fantastic. And so you got this done. And so 20 years later, you had this feeling of, you know what, I need to resurrect this thing. Let me pull it out here. Did you reread it and make changes to it? Or did you feel like?
Many times.
Okay. Yeah,
I'm not up to Richard Paul Evans, but I was up to maybe about 50 or 55 edits on it.
At some point, did you feel like you had it memorized, or?
Just about, yeah.
Oh, it's fascinating. All right, and so you decided to put this out into print, and you said, okay, now, well, what were the roadblocks that maybe kept you from getting it even printed, or did you? Or I guess let me back up a little bit. Did you feel like, okay, let me self-publish it? Let me go find a publisher? What was that whole process like for you?
I did not feel at the time that I was ready to work with a publisher.
Mm-hmm.
And because I had done so many things on my own in the past, I felt comfortable publishing on my own. I had written my first book, published as an indie author, and I also entered it in a competition in the state of Florida and won first place for biography.
Nice.
So I felt like I was on the right track and that I could do something with this one. So that kind of was my catalyst to keep going.
Okay. Well, who's your audience for this book, Joanne? Who are you looking to? Well, tell us a little bit more about the writings within. Is your goal to help again give people that hope that you have, or is there more to it?
I think there's more to it than that.
Okay.
Definitely a hope. The people that I'm interested in reaching are not only the stroke survivor, And one area that's very difficult for stroke survivors, and a lot of them, I think it's either 40 or 60%, I don't remember offhand, have aphasia to some degree. And aphasia is when you're not able to speak. And a lot of people who've never experienced this or been around people with strokes, they don't realize that aphasia is actually language, that their language skills are diminished, or something has happened to them. It's not the intellect, because a stroke survivor is still thinking clearly, as clearly as they can, depending on where the stroke has happened. But they understand what you're saying. It's just that somewhere between the thought process and the language itself, your body's in pause, and you cannot get those words out.
Yeah.
So
it's frustrating.
It's very frustrating. So I'm hoping that for stroke survivors to share this book with their caregivers, their family, their medical team, that it will help them to understand better. I had one woman who is a nurse that wrote to me and told me, she said, I understand physically what a stroke survivor needs. I never realized how deeply they also need help emotionally, spiritually, to come back. And she said, thank you for writing this book, because it helps me to see more that I can do to help stroke survivors. And that's a big part of my audience, are nurses and physical therapists, as well as people who are older.
Yeah, so if any medical professionals are listening to this right now, please get a hold of Joanne, and because I didn't have it near to the extent you did, but it was enough to know how frustrating it is. When you say that, the words don't come to you. I still struggle with this from time to time, because I was on the radio. I started 15 years ago on radio, and had a 5.5 year career where I was doing really well and building an audience, and then mine happened. And it's like you say, it's like the thought is there, but nothing comes out. and to even write it, did you experience anything like this where it was just painful to even think about it? It's like my brain would just start to hurt.
There were times it depended on the chapters that I was writing.
Right. Yeah.
But
so some of it just flowed. Yeah.
Yeah, it did. I do something, and hopefully most of the writers that I believe do the same thing. Before I sit down to write, I don't feel that what I'm writing is my own words. I always pray before I sit down to write, and I ask the Holy Spirit to guide whatever I'm doing. Now, if I do it on my own, I can sit there for 6 hours and struggle. But if I remember to pray beforehand, it flows.
Oh, so, that's fantastic.
And I know others do that too.
Well, what's one of the, I say one, I know there's many, one of the biggest things that people can take from this book, even if they haven't had a stroke?
That there is hope. That a lot of times, and just in life in general, we look at the overall picture of where we want to be, and we don't take a look at the smaller successes that are helping us to build the strength or the knowledge or the courage that we need when we finally get to that place where we accomplish what we believe our dreams to be. And sometimes what we think is what we want is not where we need to be. And if it changes direction, rather than being upset about it, take a child's curiosity and look at it and say, okay, it's another adventure. Let's see where we're going now. At least that's what I try to do. Of course, I'm like everybody else. I stomp my feet and grumble under my breath.
You punch your husband in the arm. That's
yeah.
okay.
But I also know that there's something good coming.
Absolutely. Oh wow, well said. My heart is warm right now. Well said. We're going to take one more quick break here. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more to Joann Glim and find out how you can get more information about this book and find out about her story and all kinds of fun stuff. But anyway, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Have you ever gone through a hard time? If you have, I'm sure you have at one point thought, nobody understands what I'm going through. My name is Tamara K. Anderson, and I'm the host of Stories of Hope in Hard Times. Join me on Resilience Talk Network, Monday through Friday at 12:30 p.m. to hear the stories of other people who have been through hard times and come through with hope, faith, and some tips that you can benefit from.
Hello everyone, this is Brad Neufeld, host of Resilience. You can catch my show every morning at 8 a.m., Monday through Friday, right here on the Resilience Talk Network. Tune in to discover what it takes to overcome any challenge that you may face in life. You'll be glad you did.
Welcome to the Resilience Talk Network. My name is Jay Walter, and I'm the host of Rebuilding. Heard every weekday night from 6 to 7 p.m. You can listen in and learn how to face your fears, overcome obstacles, and make dreams a reality. So listen every weekday night from 6 to 7 p.m. right here on the Resilience Talk Network.
Hi everyone, I'm Sarah Griffiths, the producer of Becoming the Light from the Shadows of Abuse podcast. And you can listen to my show every Monday at 7 p.m. Mountain Time, right here on Five Kingdoms Radio.
Hello my friends, this is Brad Neufeld. Thank you for tuning in to the Resilience Talk Network.
When the summer has passed, the harvest is
Hello everybody and
ended.
welcome back. Joann and I have been having a good time here during the break, but our guest today is Joann Glim. Joann is a stroke survivor and also the author of the book Trapped Within, a true story of survival, recovery, love, and hope. And so some of the things you said there at the tail end of that other segment, our last segment, Joann, is just fascinating in the fact of you pray before you write. That people need to do more of that, because I've had that experience too, where I just haven't had the words. And as I was explaining to you during the break, mine sometimes it comes up as a feeling, and it's like, all right, but there's no words for this feeling. How do I put it out there? And so a lot of times I just have to flip the switch and say, all right, I'm just going to go live and see what happens. And it does. And just say that little prayer and it just comes out. It's an awesome feeling. Anyway, so what can you tell our audience here to encourage them to do more of that? Take that time. Trust that our Father in heaven is going to help us, help us to get through those challenges.
I can tell you a story that happened to me a long time ago, because I didn't always have that kind of a philosophy in my life, kind of back and forth for a long time. And a lot of that was because of things that had happened along the way. I have a close relationship with God for a while, and then something tragic would happen, like my mother passing away. And I was 14 at the time, and I was very angry at God, because who would take a mother away from a young child?
Right.
So we didn't talk to, well, I didn't talk to him for a number of years. And I got married and had a baby of my own and thought of all my blessings and everything. And I was very close to him again. So I was kind of like off and on with my religion for a long time. And there were a number of things that happened like that. And I think a lot of people have the same situation in their lives. You know, we struggle. We really struggle with life sometimes. And sometimes you have to learn to just sit back and just not struggle so hard. But when I finally got to a point that I knew God needed to be center in my life, and that's all there was to it, was when I knew with the stroke, you know, and I told him, okay, I'm going to try one more time, but I can't do this by myself, you know. And so in my mind, I just reached my hand up towards him, and I haven't taken it down since. So I think all of us have that kind of a moment that happens in our lives where we have to choose, are we going to do this on our own, or are we going to ask God to help us through? And I say God because that's who is in my heart. That's who helps me to love and to be kind and to be the best I can. There's other people that call God by another name, and that's fine too, as long as whoever it is that you are worshiping is leading you in the right direction to be closer to him.
Yeah, and did you find this out too? This is a big thing that I learned about this, and I really want our audience to understand this, Joanne, so I'm so glad you brought it up. The thing is when we ask for that help, in our minds, we tend to think, oh, it's just going to fall out of the sky, or I'm just going to wake up and it's going to be sitting beside my bed or something, when a lot of times it comes from other people. We'll be praying for the help, and then all of a sudden a person will come into our life. Either it could be somebody that we've known forever or somebody that we just barely met. Did you find that as well?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
There's messages that come to us all the time. We just choose to ignore them.
Yeah.
You know, we have to learn to kind of tune in to what's important. And it comes through reading. You know, if you pick up the Bible, if you've never read the Bible before, and I keep it by this in our den next to my chair. So, you know, sometimes I'll pick it up. I have nothing in particular that I want to read, but I'll just look at it and I open a page and I'll read it, whatever's right in front of my face. And it's never failed that that's the message I was supposed to hear for that day.
Wow. That's fantastic. Well, I think, you know, there's a lot more we could talk about today, and it's a sad thing our time's coming to an end, but I'd like you to come back later after you get some things going. Would you mind coming back and giving us some updates on how things are going?
I would love that. I've enjoyed my time with you, and I know the first conversation that we had, and I had told you I had been in radio a number of years back.
Yes.
And I because of the stroke, my voice is weak, and so I don't have that radio sound anymore to it. So I was very shy and reticent about doing something like that ever again.
Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic. Well, I want to encourage you. Maybe you should start a podcast talking about these kind of things. And I don't know. Have you thought about that?
I've thought about it, but I really stumble over myself, and that's partially part of the stroke. I'm more cautious now than I've ever been before. Part of it's because I'm basically shy. Hard to tell from this, but I really am. I mean, if we were in a party situation, I can be in front of 1,000 people and speak, and I'm fine. I can be in a one-on-one like we are, and I'm fine. But you get me into a room with about 20 people, and I'm the one that's hiding behind the record player. I just, so.
Isn't that
But,
weird
yeah,
how that is? Yeah. Because it just brings me back to my first radio interview that I had, because I was a public speaker. I was speaking all the time to, large crowds and everything. And then I was asked to be on the radio one time at a station down in southern Utah. They wanted me to come on and talk about a program that I had for youth at the time. And I was excited when they asked me, "Oh, this is going to be great." But the night before, and I openly admit this, I was in the fetal position in my closet, sucking my thumb, going, "I can't do this. I can't do this." And I'm like, "What's the difference between this and having the audience there?" So it was kind of weird. I just remember I had them record it so I could listen to it afterwards, and the commentator there asked me, "So tell us about your program, Brad. I hear it's really exciting." And I'm like going, "Yeah, Mike, it's a very exciting program." And anyway. But then it was shortly after that one of the station managers said, "Hey, you've got a pretty good voice. I think you ought to do radio." And so that's what opened the door for my career there. So again, God does great things. You just have to ask for it.
You have to listen.
Open the doors there. So, fascinating. But if you were to have a podcast, what would you call it? I'm putting you on the spot here, I know, but.
Well, I know that I would do it in regards to stroke survivors, because those are the people that, with 680,000 people that had a stroke just in 1 year, and that's a first-time stroke. And some of them didn't survive it. A lot of them did. Probably about 80% of them did. Thank goodness, because of all the advances in medicine that they have now, they can help us. But I think because the stroke survivors themselves are the ones that really have the key to what's needed, I think we can all help to open the floodgates and let the medical community, the caregivers, the families know what we really truly need in order to not just survive, but to thrive. We might not be the same that we were before, but in some ways we're going to be better.
Absolutely. Thank you for saying that. Let's wrap it up on that. Joanne, thank you so much. Well, how can people find out about your book? Where can they find it?
Well, we are on Amazon. They can order it that way. If they'd like an autographed copy, they can go to our website, which is www.joannnglim. It's JOANN. G is in girl, L is in love, I is in India, M is in Mary.
Love it. Love it.
.com.
Anyway, high five. Ready? All right. Very good. Joanne, you are beautiful inside and out. Thank you so much for coming on here today. And again, I want to reassert my commitment here to you to get this out. People need to know this, because I know with as many as you just stated, people who've had strokes for the first time, I'm sure almost every family within our voice here has had someone in their family that has had this occur in their life. And so but as you say, it's not the end. It's something that can turn out to be very, it can be what you choose it to be. Is that a good way to put it?
Right.
Thank you. Any final words to the audience here as we're signing off?
I'm excited to hear from people. Feel free to get in touch with me through Brad. I'm on Facebook. Would love to have some new friends. I love my old friends. I'm not throwing my old friends out, but I'd like to add to my friends, so come on over.
Am I your friend, Joanne?
You are my friend.
Thank you. All right. No, thank you so much. Our guest today, Ann Glim. Joanne is the author of the book Trapped Within, a true story about survival, recovery, love, and hope. And if you want to find out more about that as well, you can also give me a call. My number is area code 435-830-6945. That's 830-6945, or you can email me at info@bradjneufeld.com. That's info@bradjneufeld, NEUFELD.com. This has been an episode of Resilience, and you can see us on our website at resiliencetalk.com. That's resiliencetalk.com. We're all about helping all of you out there become the very best that you can be, because we know almost every person out. Well, we know everybody out there has talents and skills buried within them, but for some reason this life just has a way of kicking it out of us, and we very few people actually take those extra steps to become who they truly are or truly could be. And that's why the show Resilience. We want to help you overcome those challenges and break through those walls. But until we meet again, go for everything that you want in life and make it happen.